Right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's that time. We'll get started. We've got quite a busy agenda. So any apologies? Item 1, please.
Councillor Yvonne Williams, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Any others? Any late items? There are none. Receipt of petitions? There are none. No other urgent items other than the addendums that have been circulated or on a couple of reports. So minutes, declarations of interest, please.
Chair, if I may declare an interest in relation to item number 10, the new assembly rooms. I'm a director and company secretary of the operating company for the National Eye Centre in Nottingham.
Okay. Okay, so then the minutes of the meeting held on the 14th of November. Can I have a proposer and seconder, please? Jonathan, Nicola, thank you. Okay. Item 7 then, recommendations of the Executive Scrutiny Board, of which there are 2 in Appendix 1 and 2, 2 being the confidential paper, or confidential recommendations too. So I propose to deal with them as the same way previously, deal with each item as they come up and refer to the recommendations of the Executive Scrutiny Board during each item, if that's okay with everybody. So that moves us then to item 8, which is a motion of, a response to the motion from full council. You, Roy?
Yes, Chair. The motion to the Council on the 21st of November of this year requested that the Council Cabinet review the decision to cease funding the main contractor and the consequences of this and provide funding to creative carers until at least April 2019. The Council did not withdraw funding. The funding was withdrawn by the agency that was contracted to provide the service. This was Community Action Derby. Having reviewed whether it would be possible to transfer that contract to creative carers, the advice is that we would have to go out to a procurement process, and therefore this option was not considered as a satisfactory solution. And we also looked at providing a grant to creative carers, but again that would have to go out to a competitive process, and so that option was not considered because the legal advice that we had been given remains that directly provide funding to any organisation for the provision of services as the motion invites is potentially unlawful. However, the good news is that we will be meeting with creative carers tomorrow. Creative carers have said that the motion itself, they were not looking to a backdoor approach to the council for cap in hand for money or business advice, but creative carers are starting a new project with non-council funding, and that there is an agreement to work in partnership together to reach mutually shared goals. The meeting itself is being brokered, or has been brokered, by Councillor Graves, who put the meeting to council. So in that case, Chair, I would advise that we continue along those lines with creative carers.
Okay, so some positive may well come out of it. Andy, any further comment from you on that subject?
Thank you, Chair. I think Councillor Webber summarised the position very clearly in terms of the legal position in relation to the motion. I think the most up-to-date position around the work that Creative Carers has done to secure a different stream of funding and still wanting to work in partnership with the Council is very positive, and look forward to doing so.
Thank you. Any other contributions? Councillor Graves is not here, unfortunately, but we'll make sure that gets back to him, if that's all right. Moving on then to item 9, which is the approval of the Council Tax Support Scheme for 2019-2020. Mr McClure.
Yes, thank you, Chair. This report comes to Cabinet tonight on the back of the universal credit rollout in Derby since July. The report brings proposed changes to our council tax support scheme. Like I say, the original report on our proposals to change the scheme came here in July, and the proposal is to allow our claims to be new claims to be backdated for a period of 3 months rather than 1 month within the current scheme, and this is to help new claimants for universal credit. Since July, we have been out of consultation. The consultation we've received back has been positive, and the recommendation here today, Chair, is to recommend that we bring in this new scheme for council tax support with effect from the 1st of April next year. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, so for clarity, the Executive Scrutiny looked at it last night, but resolved just to note the report. Any other observations, comments on this, please? Ruth?
Just say really, obviously the extension to the backdating is very welcome, and I'm sure a lot of people will be very thankful for it.
Yes, Councillor Ralston.
Just to give our thanks to John Massey and his team for bringing this to our attention and progressing it and getting it up to date and helping those being more proactive going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. We must have a recommendation there then, and that's to approve the CTS scheme from the 1st of April 2019, which is shown at Appendix 1. This includes extending the maximum backdating time period from 1 month to 3 months. Can we agree that? Agreed. Thank you. Item 10 then. Okay, so item 10 is the new assembly rooms to approve proposals for the renewal and enhancement of Derby assembly rooms. Christine?
Chair, shall I introduce this report? This is Chair, this is a very significant report, very significant development for the city. It takes as its starting point the July Cabinet decision to commission a feasibility study into the refurbishment of the existing assembly rooms to a minimum of a 15-year life, and to explore potential enhancements to the assembly rooms to improve its feel and usability. The report describes the process for doing that. We had an external consultant team led by Pick Everard, who provided project management, architectural services, ACOM, M&E specialists, GLEADS, cost control, IPW, sort of operation control, together with a number of other consultants. There was a process of stakeholder consultation during that, and that's outlined also in the report. The cost of the repairs themselves, essential repairs for a minimum of a 15-year life, is just over £18 million, £18.2 million. And the enhancements that are proposed are costing £5 million. Just a couple of points about those. They are described in the report, but the repairs are very significant, Chair, because I think once you start digging into the building and you are looking for that sort of life, you have to deal with not only the core M&E but also rewiring. We're looking at the external glazing to the front of the building, and there's also a significant provision for asbestos. And I think that's important because when you start rewiring, you're damaging, you're affecting a lot of services. So there is a significant repair cost. In terms of the enhancements, the most significant enhancement is the creation of commercial units along the front of the building. This is effectively by glazing in the area under the cantilevers to the building, but also in the area around the Tourist Information Centre. Tourist Information Centre will remain, there'll be an alternative location there for it. That's extremely significant, but there are other enhancements to the entrance of the building to refresh the bar areas, the front of house areas, etc. The report identifies how it is funded. That's set out in paragraph 7.1, the capital funding 7.1 and the ongoing revenue in 7.2. In relation to the capital funding, the costs of the proposed works, repairs, enhancements are £23 million. It is considered prudent to include a further £1 million client reserve on top of that. And the reason for that is in part it's an additional contingency. There are contingencies built into those costs, but it's an additional. But also it does allow for there to be further design work on the really difficult and awkward area between the car park and the main entrance to the assembly rooms, and that will take a little bit longer to work through that. So it gives us a provision. So the total cost £24 million. The capital funding sources are given in paragraph 7.1. I won't necessarily go through those, but I'll just draw attention to a couple. £13 million of capital receipts. In the amended report that was circulated, we've just added a couple of extra sentences to make it absolutely clear that we are relocating, it is proposed to relocate this from the new swimming pool to new assembly rooms. Hence, there's a new recommendation 2.5, which just makes that clear, asks people to note it, and there's a comment there too to that effect. There may be questions about that, but just that does not mean the new swimming pool is not going ahead. It's just simply that the way it is funded is different. There's also, just draw attention to the grant from the Local Enterprise Partnership, 4.5 million. The recommendations in the report are conditional on that. We have a high level of confidence that the Local Economic Partnership will agree that, but of course we don't know that yet. The rest of the resources are set out there. In terms of the revenue, I draw your attention to paragraph 7.3. Effectively, that gives you the steady state revenue costs of running the facility. Chair, we anticipate the facility being work starting in September, subject to approval of next year, with it being complete, ready to open by autumn 20. The recommendations, Chair, seek to effectively delegate authority to progress the scheme as rapidly as possible, including a recommendation to seek an operator. Now, whether that's Derby Live or some other form of trust or an external operator has not yet been decided, and the report seeks authority to delegate that. It also draws attention to the fact that this is subject to approval by the Local Enterprise Growth Partnership, as I've just said. Chair, happy to take any questions on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. First thing to say, I think to note is to give the Cabinet's thanks for that extremely hard work that's had to go into this over a relatively short period of time. Complicated work, a detailed feasibility study, and a necessarily urgent one, because we all should welcome this as a step that takes the city towards its recovery, and the sooner that can happen, the better. So thank you to the staff that have been involved in this, and in anticipation of their future hard work to deliver this on time and in an exciting fashion that it can turn out to be. So, any comments in relation to this report? Oh, Councillor Eldred.
Thank you, Chair. It's hard to know where to start, really. I think I'll start with the City Centre Master Plan for 2030, which specifically identified the need for a new performance venue, saying that it was critical and would be a game changer in terms of regeneration of the city centre. I think that, you know, obviously this is not going to be a game changer because it's actually going backwards and not going forwards. And I just think the evidence in front of you doesn't lead to this being the best option for the city, quite frankly. There was a consultation that was run about this time last year, a little bit earlier, November last year, which was on the basis of an executive scrutiny recommendation that said that 72% of people who responded to that consultation supported a new build option, either the music and performance venue or a lyric theatre or the hybrid option, all of which were new build options and not refurb options. And I know that because executive scrutiny last night asked for a copy of the consultation that was conducted less than a year ago, which I hope that Cabinet members have had the opportunity to look at, because it's, you know, provides very interesting reading in terms of what the public actually want, as opposed to, no disrespect to Facebook polls or polls in the Derby Telegraph. This is the only formal public consultation that has taken place, and it clearly shows the public of Derby supported a rebuild option, not refurbishment. So let's reference that. Also,
sorry, Lisa, can I just, do you mind, is there a question coming here or anything along those lines?
I'm not limited to asking questions, though, am I, Chair? We've established that in previous meetings.
I'm asking you if you've got a question on the line.
No, I'm making comments. I don't have questions.
Do you have any questions in relation to the consultation?
No, but I'm not limited to asking questions.
Okay, well, I'm going to ask the Cabinet to, if they've got any queries or any comments they want to make on your initial comment around consultation.
Well, it's not, I haven't finished, Chair. Are you cutting me off again, aren't you? You're doing it again, aren't you? You're going to cut me off and stop me speaking. Why won't you let me speak, Chair? Where does it say that I'm limited in terms of speaking?
I told you once, I am going to ask the Cabinet if they have any response to your initial point in relation to the consultation.
So you needed to interrupt me when I hadn't even finished?
You were going to deal with it on a one-by-one basis.
I find it really intriguing that you've come up with those figures, because from the consultation you refer to on page 16, it actually says very specifically, do you agree with the council's preferred option? So you are obviously telling them what the council preferred, based on the 1,003 people that took part, and 52% said no. Right, which was pretty clear cut to me, but you then decided, oh well, we want to do this. Now, on the opposite side, you know, you may turn around and say, well, no disrespect, but actually 50% more, 1,600 people responded to the Derby Telegraph's version of this, and 61% said, yes, actually, we think you should revitalise the city quickly, we think you should reopen the assembly rooms, and we think you should do it without borrowing. So there we go. So in terms of your consultation and telling people that 72% said a new build, no, 72% did not say a new build. 43% said they would like a new performance venue. 28% said they'd like an assembly rooms, 22% said a lyric centre, and 7% said a hybrid. So as much as you like to manoeuvre those numbers into your 72% version of an assembly rooms new build, that's not factually correct, is it, Lisa? The reality is that it's actually only 43%, and 52% said no.
Thank you. Anybody else in Cabinet want to refer to the consultation? Okay, that to me indicates, Lisa, that you'll see that all the Cabinet members have got a copy of that consultation. It's been a core consideration of the project team and the Cabinet throughout the deliberations over the assembly rooms. So it was clearly a flawed consultation at the time. We have no intention of repeating that. We've no intention of repeating that.
Sorry, I mean, officers are running...
We've got no intention of repeating that consultation.
So, okay, so
And
unfortunately...
we'll move on from there, Lisa, shall
Well,
we?
no, because I want to respond to the Cabinet Member for Finance, who unfortunately can't do maths. On page
Councillor Eldred,
16,
Councillor Eldred,
I have a right to respond to what has been said and challenge it.
And you'll stop talking whilst I give an opinion on this, okay?
You just
be
invited
quiet
me to
for a
come
moment,
back in.
please. Be quiet for a moment, please. Will you turn your mic off? Okay. Now, Councillor Eldred, you had an hour and a half debate of this last night, out of which came 4 recommendations, which is the right way of doing this, and that we will deal with those recommendations to Cabinet. But what I can assure you is this is a Cabinet meeting. This is not a debating chamber for you to revoice the discussions that you had last night or for you to give speeches in relation to this article. I gave you a little bit of latitude to make an opening comment on it. If you continue along the lines you are, what I will do is simply refer to the recommendations from the Executive Board last night and I'll move on. So you've made an initial comment and that was around consultation. Have you any other questions in general that are not covered in the Executive Scrutiny Board recommendations that I'll give you one more opportunity to raise for the Cabinet's benefit? Thank you.
So, as we have clarified through the monitoring officer before, there is absolutely nothing in the council constitution that limits me to asking questions in this forum. This is a public forum. At the executive scrutiny meeting last night, there were no cabinet members present. Therefore, there was no opportunity for members of that committee to scrutinise what is a manifesto commitment and a political decision that you are making. This is a public forum where you as the Cabinet will be held to account by opposition parties, and that is part of our role. And I will not be limited to asking questions. We have clarified this through the monitoring officer before. I also have to come back and challenge the assertions made by your Cabinet Member for Finance. On page 16, it clearly says 43% supported the music and performance venue. That was a rebuild option, not a refurbishment option. 28% supported refurbishment, 22% supported a lyric theatre, which was a rebuild option, not a refurb option, and 7% supported a hybrid option. That was a rebuild option, not a refurb. So if you add those numbers together, 72% supported a rebuild option of some description.
Absolutely, Lisa, totally agree.
And yet
However,
you are...
it didn't say assembly
So
room.
can I have the same
Councillor
courtesy,
Alston,
please?
Sorry, can we just... I'm going to give Councillor Eldred latitude to finish this speech and then I'll move on, as I said I was going to do in the first place.
So it is clear that only 28%, in the only formal consultation that has taken place on this, and with the greatest respect to the Derby Telegraph, I do not think that this council, or nor do I think the Derby Telegraph would expect this council to make decisions based on polls that appear in the newspapers. And if you are seriously considering that you are favouring a poll in the Derby Telegraph over a council-run public consultation, then we really do have some serious problems. However, I will move on.
Before you move
I have
on,
another
Councillor
point.
Eldred, before you try to move on, you referred to your advice from the legal officer in relation to your contribution. The fact is that I, as chair of what is a cabinet meeting, have the power, it is within my discretion what contribution I allow towards the cabinet meeting. And what I'm going to say to you now is that I'm going to move on, subject to anybody else wanting to make a contribution. I'm going to move on to the recommendations from the corporate scrutiny.
With respect, I have other comments which I feel are very... Again, you are stopping me from making all the comments I want to make on this report, and you are not allowing proper scrutiny of your decision.
I was wondering whether, on the topic of consultation, there is going to be any consultation, obviously before work starts, but obviously that's supposed to be next autumn, so there should be plenty of time for some public consultation, at least to actually explain to people fully what it is that the council's wanting to do, and to get feedback within that.
Yeah, Councillor Skelton, what the plan is, this tonight is to agree to start that process, to agree to stop the rebuild of the assembly rooms and to start the renewal of the assembly rooms. The plans in detail will be issued. Everybody will get an opportunity to comment on the plans as they develop and the designs as they develop. But in terms of consultation, we take the view, or I take the view, and I think the Cabinet follow me on this, is that we've consulted to death on the proposals for the marketplace. We've had proposal after proposal after proposal. What this city needs is to move on. The city centre needs rejuvenation now and regeneration now. The consultation that we've taken due consideration of, that was issued in January, in our view was flawed. But we've spoken to the public, and the public are the important people in relation to this, whilst we've heard and had frank and open discussions with the business community. We regard the view of the public to be the most important in this, and consistently during the election process, during our doorstep conversations and contact with the public, the message has been the same, and the ratio of support for renewal has been consistently around the 60 to 70% mark. We haven't got the time to go back to a formal consultation before signing off getting this work done. The city needs to move on in terms of its regeneration and the death of the tumbleweed that's on the marketplace. So there will be consultation on the detail. In terms of the detail will be shared. We will take in the views of people as that process develops, but we can't not get on with the process of renewing the assembly rooms for the benefit of the city. Does anybody in Cabinet want to add to that?
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to just mention that the people of Derby will have a new look and feel assembly rooms with a more commercial programme. It's going forwards, it's not going backwards. Quite frankly, it has been a long time coming with the fire back in February 2014, nearly 5 years without a major entertainment venue. A brand new venue would take another 5 years before completion, and I've no doubt that the 44 million would increase by the end of 5 years, probably to 55 or 60 million. We talk about consultation. We have continuous consultation. My Chellaston Ward residents, when I speak to them, when I knock on the doors, when I meet them in the streets and I meet them at meetings, they only mention the new assembly rooms. Everyone I speak to is positive about this project. A new, modernised, vibrant feel, boosting the city centre economy sooner rather than later. A proposed 284 events a year, increasing the number of visitors to the city centre, expected to be about 164,000 attendees. I understand from officers that the assembly rooms could have been reopened shortly after the fire, but they were told that this wasn't going to happen, and this could have been hinted by the previous administration. And I'd like to complete, Chair, in joining you with thanking the officers for their professional approach and advice. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Ruth, I forgot to mention actually, or point out that whatever the result of a consultation, it would not be a veto over a Cabinet decision. If we're satisfied that we've done due diligence, that we've satisfied that this is the best option for the city, it's financially viable, it's the appropriate thing to do, then it's not a veto to the council Cabinet's decision to be able to say this is what we intend to do. So that's just to put that marker down. You wanted to come back?
Yes. Some people will probably be aware that I think yesterday or the day before, there was a small fire in Into Centre, which was stopped by sprinklers. So I'm going to raise the issue again of sprinklers, that we really do need to have sprinklers in the new assembly rooms.
Yeah, I'll put that to the officers, but we have rehearsed this discussion before, and we got a clear advice from all sources to say that this is not the common normal way forward. Did you want to? Okay, yes, I'll get an answer on the sprinklers first. Greg, thank you.
So which question do you want me to ask? The sprinkler question. Yes, Chair, thank you. We did look at, the consultant team did look at sprinklers as a potential enhancement to health and safety, fire protection for the building. They didn't think that was necessary. There are a number of enhancements to the buildings to improve its fire protection. Some of the doors have been replaced, so there's a higher standard door. There's also a screen will be created which will be able to drop down in the event of a fire to separate out some of the escape routes, which are not, we don't think are fully separated at the moment. So there are a number of enhancements, but the advice from the team fairly clearly was that sprinklers were not necessary. It was challenged during the process of the design work on a couple of occasions. That was clear advice for them. So yes, the proposed costs do not include sprinklers. We don't think that's necessary, Chair.
Okay, Councillor Eldrick, you indicated, is it to do with the sprinklers?
No, Chair, it's not.
Oh. What is it about then, please?
Well, if you let me speak, then I can tell
Give me
you,
an
can't
indication
I?
what it's about.
I have a question, actually. On what
Okay.
grounds do you believe the previous public consultation was flawed? If you could elaborate on that, that would be very helpful.
We certainly can. Councillor Smale, you want to start with that one?
I think it's flawed just as much as what the library review was flawed. It was given a clear, it's the same with every consultation the previous administration did. It always lent towards the preferred option by the council cabinet. We had the libraries one, we want option B. So you gave the public a bad option, or an option that you wanted to lead with, and the public had to pick the best out of a bad option. And I feel the same way with this consultation. You gave everyone a new entertainment venue system, but didn't really outline any of the more details. You wanted your preferred choice, so you weighted it to your direction.
We're almost in Brexit territory here, aren't we, about the question and how the question's posed and whatever. The youth mayor indicated, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just on the consultation for this new regeneration. So, yes, young people want their city to be regenerated, though I am wondering why such a rush. Surely a 1 to 2 month consultation period would not only, delay the starting of the regeneration, but still with autumn, maybe winter, it would still be in time for the pantomime, so I think we're clear there. And it will provide reassurance to young people and residents, really, that of the success of this new regeneration for the assembly rooms.
Thank you for that. Absolutely, thank you for your contribution. It's not a case of rushing it, it's a case of making a judgment call as to when we need to push the button and get on with doing something. There has been a consultation. There has been consultation by us with stakeholders, by us with the public in many ways along the way. With the time of year that we're at, to organise and pay for it, and that's an aspect of it as well, a consultation costs money. We don't think, well, we know that the outcome wouldn't be any different. And so at the end of the day, the overriding consideration for us is doing the refurbishment, what's necessary for the city in a timely fashion, and actually getting on with it, because we've had lots of plans, lots of consultations, and the public believe, I believe the public believe that we need to start to do something, take some positive action. So whilst absolutely it would take us probably up to the pantomime season, but if we delayed it even further, but our judgment call is that that's not the appropriate way to go. But thank you for your contribution. Nick.
Yes, just in relation to that question specifically around why we as a cabinet or myself as an individual thinks that this original consultation was somewhat flawed, is the fact that the 4 options given obviously diluted the message of options in terms of viability options. And in relation to that, as I've already pointed out, 52% of people said no, they did not want the new performance venue as it was said. But when we look at page 23, it also goes on to talk about the fact that they wanted it to be the best value for money and the most effective option. And in terms of the second most important thing, the quickest option for Derby, we need a venue as soon as possible. And I think that just touches on the points that in terms of why we need to do this quickly, is we have consulted, significant amounts of money have been spent on consultations. The message, as I interpreted as it now, is the reality of this is that it isn't, 52% said no, we don't want a new build. Options-wise, in terms of our current financial position, because of the capital pressures that we have from other projects around the city, for example, the A52, we are restricted in the amount of funds that we have, and we have to prioritise how we get the city up and running. And I believe that this is the most cost-effective way of getting the city up and running as soon as possible, to take advantage of the business rates pilot that we have in the city, to support the small businesses, and those that I've spoken to in the market hall and the smaller businesses around are very much in favour of getting something moving ASAP and not leaving the tumbleweed there for another 5 years like Labour have.
So Councillor Holmes.
Thank you, Chair. Just a few points just to add to what's already been said. I think if we talk about the consultation, 1,006 responses. Well, I can say with absolute assurance that we've engaged with many thousands of residents way and above that, and consistently listening to them, we know what they want us to do, and that's what we're doing. And we listen to the public to take forward the renewal and reopening of the assembly rooms, whereas Labour didn't listen to anybody but themselves. And it's my view that from day one, following the fire, they had the attitude that it was never going to reopen. It was a decision that was, in my opinion, made almost instantly, which framed their position as administration on what their preferred option would be. And everything from that point was geared towards and presented towards that skewed view. And so it's no doubt that this consultation had that spin on it, because they wanted to frame up the outcome of the consultation to their preferred option. And I'll also say, Chair, that the extremely negative view that the Labour administration had the day after the fire onwards, really, in terms of really unfair criticism of the venue. I think it's, you know, the assembly rooms as was never going to be perfect, and there's probably venues across the country that are never perfect. The arena certainly isn't perfect. And we know that. So, but I think some of the comments that were made about the assembly rooms were very unfair in retrospect, and again seem to be following some kind of agenda to downplay what a worthwhile venue and what it could actually offer, even in the state that it was in then, that they could have been reopened within months with relatively, with the insurance money that is now gone, obviously, and a modest investment. I think this is the right thing to do for the city. I support what the Chair has said about delivering this as quickly as possible to revitalise and support local businesses and the city centre. I think the public are behind us on this one, and I think that will become more and more apparent as we move forward with the detailed plans when we consult in that respect with the public to show them what our plans are and how we're going to deliver them.
Okay, so next to indicate was John. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to pick up on what Councillor Grimdale stated, in full agreement with him, actually, and it's from a different angle. As you may be aware, I'm involved in building services, electrical and mechanical and so on. I'm fairly familiar with the assembly rooms, going back right to the 1980s. I have actually spoken, and this was quite a while ago, to one of the on-site engineers who was permanently based on that site when the fire happened and shortly after. And yes, they actually did the work ready to connect on. So if a new plant room on the roof had been shipped in, they could have got it up and running pretty quick, and it was stopped. And that's fact. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, John. We spoke about this early doors, didn't we, in relation to what may or may not be needed in terms of rewiring and stuff. I know that the officers involved have tried to get in contact with the people you referred to, the people who were involved in the assembly rooms before, but the bottom line assessment is, and I can assure you this has been robustly challenged, that the premises, for the purpose that we're trying to do, needs a full rewire. So, and obviously, and part of that was around the cost implications of that as well.
Yes, Chair, but my point was really reiterating what Councillor Grimdale said, is that building could have been put back into service quite rapidly shortly after the fire, but it wasn't.
Yeah, we all know that, John, and it was a shame because the ramifications for the city have been quite significant as a result of the delay, haven't they? So, Councillor Eldred, you indicated.
I mean, if that was true 4 years ago, it's true now. You know, so if it could have just been got up and running straight away with a new plant room shipped in 4 years ago, then why don't you do that now and open it next week?
That's what we're going to do. Thank you for that.
But anyway, so I have a couple of questions, Chair. Chair, I have a couple of questions. I hadn't finished my contribution.
I was just wanting to revisit the whole idea of a consultation. Obviously, if there's not going to be actually informal consultation throughout the process from now onwards, at least would you consider a recommendation that there is actually information put out there, not just to councillors but also to the public, so that people actually know what's going on and the progress that's being made?
We're happy to do that. Yeah, we've done it. We did it with the arena. We'll do that. We'll let people know what they can expect when the assembly rooms reopens and take views and do it as we go along. Absolutely, no problem with that. Right. So what I'm going to do now is refer to the recommendations from corporate scrutiny last night. And the first one of the recommendations from corporate scrutiny last night was that the Corporate Scrutiny Board last night resolved to recommend that Council Cabinet withdraw the report and any decision on the future of the assembly rooms is deferred until such times that basically an impact assessment is carried out and that a full public consultation is carried out. Cabinet, do you have any observations on those first recommendation, please?
I think from our discussions earlier, I think the message is very, very clear in terms of why at this point in time, in terms of going back out to public consultation, it would just be another massive cost to the council, and I don't think it's going to change the outcome as much as you might like it to. I think the outcome would be what we are currently planning to take forward, which is to refurbish the assembly rooms. In terms of a cost benefit analysis, we are looking at the depth in detail of that, and there are options on the table, but in terms of why we've decided to go with this, obviously we've considered the additional commercial units to support this new build and additional improvements to the actual building, and considering the outside operators and how we can make it more commercially viable. But in terms of the most important thing for me, it's about bringing the city back up and reaping the benefits from that in relation to the small businesses and seeing the regeneration of the city.
Okay, any contrary view to that in the Cabinet? Okay, the second recommendation then is to recommend that the delegation outlined at recommendation 2.3 is rejected, and that any decision in relation to the procurement of an operator for the venue is considered by Council Cabinet and the Executive Scrutiny Board. In my view, that would cause unnecessary delay and unnecessary complication. It's important to the scheme to be able to get on in a timely manner, and the important thing in relation to the appointment of an operator is to give them the time to build up and work with us on the development of the assembly rooms, but also to get the process in chain, if you like, and set up and running. Yes, Councillor Ralston.
We have a very good procurement team in this council. I'm confident that the officers will look at that in enough detail. And I think from our point of view, we will be diligent enough as is, and we can't delay any further.
Any contrary view to that in the Cabinet? No. Okay, the last recommendation from last night then was to recommend that the original public consultation in relation to the new performance venue is appended to the report for the public scrutiny and for consideration by Council Cabinet prior to any decision being made. And all I can say on that one is reiterate, we as a Cabinet, as a working group on this Assembly Rooms, have had this consultation in mind from day one. It's a matter of public record. It's here, it's out there for the public and for other groups to see, so that recommendation is actually not needed. That concludes the recommendations from Executive Scrutiny Board last night. The flavour I got from Cabinet is that we cannot agree to any of those recommendations from last night. Is that the case? We're all agreed?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll turn then to the recommendations in the report itself. And in that case, there are recommendations 2.1 to 2.5. Anybody want to move that we accept those recommendations?
I'll move, Chair.
Seconded by Councillor Barker. Thank you. That completes that item. Yes, thank you. So, we've dealt with item 10, we're on to item 11, which is the Community Managed Libraries Review of Implementation Plan. Christine.
Thank you, Chair. So members will recall in July 2017, Cabinet approved the implementation of the Library Strategic Review outcomes. One of the main conclusions of the review was that the Council should retain 5 statutory libraries and operate them as Council-run libraries, with the aim of transferring the remaining 10 libraries to a community-managed library service model. And following that approval, the Council then went into a period where we had an expression of interest process to take on those 10 community managed libraries, and it actually attracted one expression of interest from an organisation called Direct Help and Advice, and after a period of assessment of that expression of interest, that was accepted by the Council, and DHA have since been moving on to take on some of the libraries. So following the transfer of the first 3 libraries to DHA, the last one transferring at the end of July this year, it was recognised that there were a number of challenges and issues that had emerged during the handover process and that transitional period between the Council and DHA. So at that time, the Council, DHA and Unison agreed that during August this year we would do a review of that implementation process to look at the overall robustness of the plan and to see what lessons we could learn about any future transfers. It's fair to say that review process has taken longer than we anticipated, and that's really due to a number of the issues that have come up and the complex nature of trying to assess the best way forward. And the report sets out a number of options that we looked at in terms of moving the project forward. One of the key conclusions from the review and the stakeholder feedback that we undertook was that actually, although there are a number of challenges, there have been some very positive outcomes from the current work, and that actually the community managed library model can be seen as a positive way to move forward, and that still is the right model for the Council to consider. But what the review did conclude was that the original handover schedule and the timeline was simply too ambitious for the complex nature of the work that needed to take place, and that we needed to look to allocate more resources to both the Council and DHA to work towards the successful transition of the CMLs. So this report proposes that we still work towards transferring all 10 libraries to DHA, but set out in 1.6, it proposes a number of changes to the implementation, which is to extend the timeline for the transfer of the libraries to run from February 2019 to February 2020, to look to allocate additional resources both within the Council and DHA, and that is up to a value of £400,000 over the period of the transfers and up to the end of the 4-year period that was allocated with DHA's grants. But both parties do need to prioritise addressing the Data Protection Act 2018 requirements. That's the GDPR issues that we've been trying to resolve. And that also, we do need to make sure that we continue to improve how we communicate between the various partners. It is a complex process. There are lots of people involved, and we need to make sure that we work hard to improve our handover process for the staff, the volunteers and the customers. So the recommendations are set out, Chair, 2.1 to 2.6, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Does the Cabinet member have anything to add to this at this point?
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to say, excuse me, I'd like to just comment about the original package. We, as an administration, inherited the library package from the previous administration. The package that we inherited was too ambitious, it was unrealistic, it was problematic, and it was not feasible from the very early start. DHA and partners need the time to establish the rollout of the libraries on the CML basis. We have consulted with Unison, and we continue to have responsive, positive meetings with Unison. What I would like to do at this meeting is to thank all of the library staff, each and every one of the library staff in each and every library. Their continued professionalism in providing a first-class library service is both noted, Chair, and applauded, and not underestimated. And I'd like to also finish by saying that this administration will continue to closely monitor the libraries as they continue to roll out to DHA from February 2019. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, so actually, Cabinet will remember that when this project was originally discussed, we called it in. We pointed out the flaws in this project from the beginning. And in effect, what we're proposing now, having paused it and reviewed the way it started, is effectively what we recommended should have happened through the call-in in the first place. And what we're going to do is give this every chance possible to work for the residents of the city, to be able to provide continued provision of the libraries and enhanced library provision with the cooperation of the voluntary sector and residents where they can feel that they can get engaged and hope for a better outcome for all concerned. So that's my view on it. Anybody got a contribution? Councillor Skelton.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I think the length of time that it's taken to actually complete this review is indicative of the, I'll say it, complex mess that was in existence in May of this year. I know very well, because I have been told, that the then Cabinet member was told particularly about the GDPR issues and about the legal staffing issues, which should have set alarm bells ringing in any sensible Cabinet member's head, but it seems they didn't. But hopefully now things are on a much firmer footing and will be able to be resolved.
Okay, thank you. So we turn then to the recommendations of the executive scrutiny last night. In fact, it was considered, but they resolved not to make any comment.
Resolved to note.
To note. Well, it's surprising for me. Lisa, I've not seen you indicate on this one. Did you not want to comment on this complex
mess? Not sure if I'm allowed to speak, Chair, so...
This complex mess that you initiated in the first place? No? Okay, we'll move on then. Cabinet, can we agree the recommendations in relation to the community managed libraries 2.1 to 2.6? Agreed. Agreed, thank you. Item 13 then, the enforced sale of a long-term vacant and neglected privately owned house. Oh, item 12, is it? What did I say? I meant 12. It was anticipation of item 13. Yes, Don.
Thank you, Chair. This report is recommending that we use our intervention powers to enforce the sale of a privately owned but long outstanding vacant house in Derby. The property has been empty since 2014. The aim through our intervention is to bring the property back into use by selling the property as soon as possible, Chair. There is some further information on this report in the pink papers.
Okay, any comments on this one? No? Can we agree then, Cabinet, please? Thank you. Just for completeness, the Executive Board has pointed out it resolved to note the papers. So moving on then to item 13, investment in high quality office development, 1 Cathedral Green, Full Street. Greg.
Chair, if I may introduce this. Chair, this is a really exciting proposal to create new office accommodation of a quality in the city centre, which is very much in line with the business city theme of the city centre master plan. The specific proposal is to acquire and forward fund 25,000 square foot of offices on Full Street at the end of Full Street by Cathedral Green, and that in turn triggers a further 12,500 square foot of new built offices, which would be acquired by Unite for, I believe, for a regional facility, not by us. The cost of this is just shy of £9 million. It will be funded out of service finance borrowing. Effectively, we will be refunding the borrowing through lease repayments and the value of the building when we sell it further down the line. It is proposed to sell the build. Sorry, the name of the organisation we're leasing it to is in the confidential papers. Sorry, so I'll refer to that later rather than now, and I can give you more detailed financial information then. It is subject to capturing some D2 funding, and that's set out in the confidential papers. The programme is that, subject to approval, this would start, planning would be in the summer 19, start on site autumn 19, complete autumn 20. Chair, just to point out that all of the planning and construction risks lie with the developer, so if there's any cost overruns, for example, or issues with planning, that lies with them. Occupier risk lies with us, but we do have a tenant lined up that we are signing on the lease for the facility. I can give more details in the confidential section, Chair.
Thank you. So in summary, a very positive indication of our ambition for the city and taking the city forward, and the development and regeneration of the city as a 24-hour economy with office, residential and leisure and culture across the city. So we ought to welcome this, in my view, and promote it as a positive step forward by the council. Councillor Holmes.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to thank officers for the work they've done on this. This is an excellent proposal. We can't understate how important it is for Grade A office accommodation to be provided in this city to take us forward. Obviously, this report sets out the significant economic benefits for the city in terms of jobs and investment. And it is something which we should always, where it's prudent to do and to help fund and invest in, because sometimes the private sector may not be working at the pace that we want to work at as a city, and I think this is an example of how the council can actually kickstart that investment. I think this is excellent, an excellent scheme. It's something which I like to see more of being brought forward by officers, and I know that we've got lots of exciting projects being taken forward, Chair, for the future. I very much welcome this and look forward to the office space being both built and fully occupied in due course.
Councillor Webb.
Yes, Chair. Just for clarity, I am a paid-up member of Unite, so if there are any issues that come out, particularly in the confidential section, then I will seek advice as to whether that interest becomes pecuniary.
Okay, I won't hold that against you, Roy. Has anybody else got a comment? Yes, Councillor Skelton.
I was just wondering, obviously, Unite obviously is only taking a proportion of the floor space. Is the, or are there going to be suitable ways of subdividing and flexibility within the rest of the accommodation? Because obviously I presume we don't yet know who are going to be the occupants yet.
Greg will answer that along with some of the information in the pink papers, but go on, Glenn.
Sorry, Chair, shall I answer that later?
Yeah, well,
yes, okay,
yeah,
thank you.
if that's appropriate. We'll come back to that then, Ruth. Anything, Councillor Eldred? No? Okay, then we'll go to the recommendation of the exec scrutiny last night, which was to accept the recommendation and welcome the report whilst considering exempt detail in private session. So, moving on then, item 14, the medium-term financial plan. Don.
Thank you, Chair. This is the third in a series of medium-term financial plan reports that we've brought into Cabinet in this financial year. We brought a strategy report in July, and then we brought a further report back to Cabinet in October that set out some fairly significant savings plans, in particularly within the people services that we are now out to consultation on. This report brings our 2019-20 budget into balance, which is reliant on the delivery of further savings, and those savings are set out in some detail at Appendix 3 of the report, which are on pages 33 to 42. There is a capital section included in the report, and there's further information set out in Appendix 5 on page 46, and what that shows is some new and extended schemes that will go beyond 2018-19 into the medium-term financial plan period. Unfortunately, linked to the savings plans that we are recommending to Cabinet today, the delivery of those savings will have an impact on jobs, where our staffing numbers on the delivery of these savings will reduce by an estimated 42 full-time equivalents, and that in the round, based on previous report in October, will mean that there are potentially 170 jobs in total at risk. And what the report sets out, that as you would expect, we are managing the position through vacant posts, not filling them, and after the consultation period is over, we will be inviting expressions of interest for voluntary redundancies in order to keep compulsory redundancies to an absolute minimum. What the report triggers tonight, if it's agreed, is a full consultation period on the budget and the medium-term financial plan. That will start tomorrow for a 6-week period running till the middle of January. We listen to that feedback and then bring a final report on our budget and medium-term financial plan back into the February cycle of Council reporting. Chair, there's lots of supporting information included in the report that supports the recommendations, and there are 5 recommendations that are set out in the report at paragraph 2. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Don. Executive scrutiny looked at it last night, and they resolved to defer the scrutiny of the medium-term financial plan until the meeting of the board scheduled for Tuesday the 18th of December, which seems appropriate. As a Cabinet, obviously, we've been subject to very many meetings on this, and as Cabinet members, you've been involved in tackling what has been a challenge. And I think we need to acknowledge and thank the officers, Don in particular, and all his officers for the timely manner in which this report has been presented and his ability to get us to the position that it is today, which will be fully scrutinised and subject to a final budget meeting at a later stage. So thank you, Don, for that. Any comments in relation to this at this point? Quite rightly, I think it should be given the opportunity to be scrutinised next week. So I'm going to move on then from the Cabinet, with the Cabinet's consent, recommendations 2.1 to 2.5. Are they agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed, thank you. Item 15 then is compliance with contract and financial procedure rules, and there's an addendum to this, a late-ish item in respect of a bid, a very positive bid that perhaps Mr McClure can enlighten us on. Thank you.
Yep, thank you, Chair. Taking the first report that is in your main papers, this is seeking approval to work with our partners in the two counties, Derbyshire and Nottinghamshire, and the City of Nottingham, to move forward with a recommendation to go out to procurement for childcare litigation, so that we can actually get a best price option for the increasing amount of litigation that we have for our children and young people across the city. The recommendation is that we do that in consultation with our partners, and we move forward on that basis to, in effect, demonstrate value for money across the four councils. The second report, which is an addendum, this is coming late. There is a pot of government funding that has been set aside for sustainable transport schemes. With Nottingham City, we actually submitted a joint expression of interest, which has actually got through, and we've been recently invited to submit a bid, a formal bid against the amount of money that the government have allocated on that, and as the report indicates, that if we were to be successful and the decision will be made in February, it could be a significant amount of money in the region of £10 million. So for the benefit of the two cities. And if Cabinet are minded to go forward with that bid, we'll find out in February if we were successful or not. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Don. Another very positive, very positive bid that we're putting in for sustainable transport funding. Would come in two tranches. One, a quick win type bid, and then a further still short-term bid, but with significant funding that we're already working with Nottingham City in connection with. We got a grant for £60,000 to cover the work with them on this. Detail work going on, and some very interesting proposals being put forward or suggested should we be successful in actually receiving this money. So I'd recommend that to Cabinet, and we'll get some more news on that at a later point. Anybody else need to comment on that one? Other than the Corporate Scrutiny Board last night that considered this. Were they able to consider the addendum last night, Don, as well? Okay, good.
Chair, can I make one point? From the minutes of the Executive Scrutiny Board, there was a suggestion that reference to childcare litigation could be misleading, and requested this be clarified in the report. I think that was generally accepted, although it wasn't in the minute. I could suggest that for safeguarding and care litigation proceedings would cover the point if we change the minutes to that.
That sounds entirely appropriate then, thank you. But the recommendation was that they resolved to note the report. So we have recommendations in the item 15, 2.1 and 2.2, and in the addendum, recommendation 2.1. Are we able to agree those? Yeah, agreed. Agreed. Item 17 then is in relation to 16. What up to 17? Or 16's something different. Oh, the exclusion, right, okay. Item 16 says It relates to the exclusion of press and public. To consider a resolution to exclude the press and public during consideration of the following items. That under section 100A of the Local Government Act 1972, the press and public be excluded from the meeting during discussion of the following items on the grounds that they will involve the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraph 3 and 5 of Part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Act, and that the public interest in maintaining the exemption outweighs the public interest in disclosing the information. Did you want to make a comment in relation to that?
I'll contribute as the debate goes on if you wish, Chair.
Okay. Does anybody make... Councillor Eldred.
Thank you, Chair. We continue to absolutely believe that these matters should be debated in public. There is having reviewed the pink papers and having been part of the executive scrutiny debate last night, I feel there is not only very little in these papers that is not already in the public domain and that cannot be discussed. We also very clearly think, and it was expressed at executive scrutiny last night, that there should be at least a portion of this which can be discussed in public. There may be items on the pink papers that should be discussed in private, and we always respect that, but there are significant portions of this report that can and should be discussed publicly, but also I believe there is significant public interest contained within these pink papers that the public should be made aware of in relation to the waste treatment plant, and so I believe very, very strongly that these papers should be discussed in public session.
In that case, then we should take the advice of the Section 151 officer on the subject, please.
The Section 5 officer, Chair.
Okay.
I think the debate yesterday evening actually demonstrated very clearly why the report on the long-term waste contract in particular should remain in exempt session and exclude the public and press. I think there was the ability yesterday evening at Executive Scrutiny Board to debate issues probably in a way that hasn't been available because of the depth of material in this report. And my strong advice to the Council and to this Cabinet is that the debate on the long-term waste contract management report should remain in closed session. The other two items are quite normally exempt items because they do contain identification in relation to the long-term empty house and in relation to the commercial office development. There is material in there about the business case and also the potential occupier, which would be commercially sensitive. So that's my advice, Chair.
Thank you for that. Corporate scrutiny obviously dealt with it, executive scrutiny obviously dealt with it last night, and they resolved to accept the resolution to deal with it as an exempt matter. Anybody outside of any other contribution? In that case, Cabinet, your views on whether it should be dealt with in public or private, please?
Can I just say that as councillors and Cabinet and leadership of this council, we all must take legal advice. That's been clear all along and has been reiterated this evening. Councillor Eldred, your argument isn't with the leader of this council. Clearly your argument is with the legal officer in the advice that he is offering. I take that advice, and I think we'd all be minded to do that, and we'll continue to do that. It's our job to take professional officer advice in these matters, and I think it's the right course of action.
Any member of the Cabinet take any contrary view to that? In that case, then, the press and public will be excluded from the rest of the meeting. Thank you.